Hello and welcome to TLC. My name is Deborah Swanson and I'll be your host for this session. I'm here to welcome Beth Pouska. She will be presenting on using public relations and news writing techniques for student attention and retention. There you go, Beth.
Thanks, Deb. Thanks for setting all this up and getting us started this early morning. I hope everybody had their coffee. I hope mine kicks in a second here. So I just want to give a little introduction about myself and my background. I've been teaching in an online environment for about 10 years now, almost 9 here at Ashford. I have a master's degree in management. I started my career as a public affairs officer in the Air Force. When I got out of the Air Force, I got a job at University of Arizona doing more public relations and marketing, but I was so used to the fast-paced environment that we had in the Air Force, I decided to try for a second job. I saw a posting for online teaching. I thought, sure, why not? We'll give it a try. And I am so glad that I was bored and that I decided to give it a try. I love online teaching. I've really found that it's my passion of working with adults and working with colleagues like all of you with us today in serving those adults and helping them earn their education. So right now I'm using my GI Bill benefits to do another master's degree, this time specifically in education, adult education. And I really hope to earn a certificate in military and veteran culture to really understand those students in that environment even more. As a veteran, now as a spouse of an Air Force member, that culture and that environment, those students are really kind of my passion and kind of my environment too. So I wanted to share all that with you because I want to set the foundation for why public relations and online learning go together in my mind. So one of the things that we always have to do is to get to know each other. So if I can get my chat back up, I want to learn a little bit from the 3 of you who are with us. There it is. Cool. So in the chat box, if you would just let us know how long you've been teaching here or working here at Ashford and what kind of role or capacity, if it's teaching or if it's working with students or working for Ashford. So if you would just type that in the chat box. Hopefully you're still there. Okay, typing, good. Writing Center for 4 years, awesome. Thank you for helping all of our students. 10 years, associate faculty, awesome. I think we came on probably, you were a little bit before me, so that's great. Full-time, I love it, thank you. Awesome. 2012, so we got about 5 years there. Thanks, Charles. Awesome. We've got such a good diversity here. 10 years, 5 years, 1 year, associate faculty, full-time faculty, writing center staff. Awesome. Thank you. You can keep putting them up. Keep them going. I'm going to go back to my slides, but I really want to learn more about who you are, so I'll keep looking at that. But it looks like we have a wide range of subject experts with us. So our primary goal today is to tell you about the field that I've become educated and practiced in doing and show you how to use some of the techniques in public relations and news writing in our online environments. So in about the next 20 minutes or so, I'll give you some background about reading online and a small peek into the research of linear and non-linear reading that affects much of what we do read online, even in our classrooms. Then we'll try to imagine our classrooms as an online news source with each of our announcements or discussion posts being a news story. I'll try to wrap up all these ideas, tying it all back to what our adult learners need and want in their online learning, whether they realize it or not. So before we jump into the first topic, there's 2 reoccurring things that I want to set up front. The first one is the question of why should I care? And the second is simply the word short. You'll see that these 2 ideas are commonly used throughout public relations and journalism, as well as in website writing and development. So I'll get started, if this goes. There we go. With one of my favorite questions of why should I care? Why should we care about adapting our writing for our online classrooms? So we're going to pull up this chat box again, and just as kind of an idea of where we're at, there's lots of studies, lots of information out there about what percentage of text on the screen do we read when we read online. So if you think about a web page, any type of web page, what percentage of the text do we read when we're online? Oh no. Trying to get the chat back. Okay, unfortunately, I think technology is getting the best of me here. I'm hoping that your guesses, because I can't see the chat box, are probably 100%, 80%, 50%. I'm guessing that we're all probably a little high, and that our realistic is one of the studies has shown that we read about 20 to 28% of text on a web page. So I would like to think that this is an extreme, and our classrooms are designed a little bit differently than what a business website or a news website are. But to me, that low number of 20 to 28% is pretty shocking. But this can really help give us a guidance of how to make the most of what we post in our classrooms. So here is an example of just the first screen of an instructor guidance from one of my recent classes. So this is probably a third of what is there in total. This is what 20% would be if they only read 20% of what's on that screen. So it's kind of shocking to see how much we actually write versus how much they may actually read in our classrooms. My intention is that students being in the classroom will learn, and I hope to motivate them to read more than the statistic. But the perspective that we don't read 100% of the screen is the primary point here. Okay, so remember, I do public relations, I do writing, I'm not a scientist, numbers aren't really my thing, but there is some basic science that really helps explain the way that we read online. Online reading is more cognitively complex than reading on a page because there's hyperlinks, there's images all over, and everything else at our fingertips that are right on the web. When we're reading a book or a printed piece of paper, it takes more steps to divert our attention from the document we're staring and physically touching than it does when we're reading online. So a neuroscientist, Marianne Wolf, suggests that we are experiencing a shift from the reading brain to the digital brain. Trends of reading online are primarily non-linear, meaning we browse and scan, we zone in on looking for keywords, and we very easily read out of context. Because there is so much information easily available just a quick click away, our brains are finding ways to be selective in what we can take in. Compared to reading paragraph to paragraph, page to page, with linear reading, non-linear reading brings different opportunities for information to come to our mind. We are generally more selective in what we read because there are more cues and distractions at our fingertips on a digital device. So one well-known author and writer with a background in news writing gave us advice for all of us to follow for great writing, even well before the time of digital and online media. Ernest Hemingway started his career as a journalist for the Kansas City Star. While his news pieces weren't what earned him his place in literary history, it was his time as a reporter that helped formulate his 4 rules for writing. The first 3 rules are still accurately represented in the theory and trends in writing for journalism and websites today. And the 4th is just a good perspective to practice in any of our communications, especially with our students. The first rule is about using short sentences. This is where that neuroscience of our brains comes in and how we can be so easily distracted. If a reader has to focus on a complex multi-idea sentence, chances are the main points will be lost to all those other distractions trying to get to our attention on the screen. So the key point here is get to your point with each and every word. The second rule is to use short paragraphs. Just like each sentence gets to the point, each paragraph should get to just enough information for one point at a time. Help your readers follow point by point and overcomplicating your message in each paragraph. Remember that question before of why should I care? Our brains are asking ourselves this with every sentence and every paragraph we read. So keep answering the questions clearly and succinctly in every writing. The third rule is to use vigorous language. As we saw at the beginning of the presentation, we do have a lot of experts here with us. For a lot of us, that's meant a lot of academic writing. Rules 1 and 2 are breaking the rules of the format we've used in a lot of our academic writing. But this third rule really pushes the limit for some of us. Vigorous language is finding the balance between complex terms and advanced language while being understandable to our audience. A vigorous word that the reader doesn't know is likely to divert attention from your message. So in public relations and news writing, we focus on knowing our audience and adapting our messages to clearly communicate with their ideas and their knowledge to meet our goals. In the classroom, we also have to understand our audience, our students, and who is reading what we are posting. So in news writing, the general rule is to write for an 11th grade reading level. If you haven't been in the 11th grade reading level for a while, which most of us haven't unless you have kids there, the 11th grade reading is pretty different than the scholarly work that we're used to putting together and reading in our journals. I do want to challenge my students to further their knowledge and vocabulary, but finding the right time to do so and helping them stay on track in doing so is what's the most important here. In my journalism classes, to get an idea of the reading level of a piece of writing, we use a readability checker. There's many available online that you simply copy and paste the text into the site, and it gives you several reading level rankings based on different criteria. There's several different theories and concepts of what goes into that reading level, which is why I bring that idea of finding a resource online, running your work through, and just seeing what the different theories say about your work. One of the concepts that they look at is that variety of language and using the vigorous but understandable language. So how do we use vigorous language without confusing the reader? First of all, we have to make it exciting. We have to make our writing active. Say what you mean and challenge yourself to find the exact word that your audience will understand and feel engaged enough to continue reading to the next word, the next sentence, and the next paragraph. So this fourth rule kind of feels like a contradiction to what the macro scale of messages that we see in the news do. But I include it here because we can accomplish it on a micro level with every single word we write in our classrooms. I really respect Hemingway, and I think it's a good challenge for all of us to be positive. Focus on what is versus what isn't. This helps make our writing more direct and to the point, which is what we want our readers to experience so they understand what we mean instead of them having to interpret what we mean. So in giving you Hemingway's tips and the following tips from the Associated Press, I want to stress that the overall content of our writing in the classrooms doesn't have to change. Rather, we can focus on the format of how we present our words and our information to make the amount that students read more and more understandable. Our role as instructors is to share our knowledge with our students. When writing is the chosen delivery method, as is for a lot of our online deliverables, there are ways to connect the information we are sharing to the fleeting minds of our students. Keeping sentences, paragraphs, and words short with Hemingway's rules will help our readers, our online students, stay focused. So I want to make the connection between news writing to our classroom based on both my professions and both my experiences. So one of the common ideas that I'm guessing might be going through your head right now that I face all the time when I say I do news writing and public relations is that the news is dying. So hopefully we can quickly dispel that thought in your mind and we can make that connection in just a minute here. So it is true that a lot of print publications are going out of business. According to a Pew Research in 2012, they found that less than 23% of the people said that they could read a newspaper, said that they read a newspaper on the day prior. So on this Wednesday morning can't say I picked up the Tuesday paper. Monday, I could have done it, mainly the comics and headlines, but I picked up a piece of newspaper. But what I can say, and what is the good information here, is that I feel informed today about our world thanks to online news. News isn't really going away. It's just shifted a lot to the online format. The good news, and hopefully the connection to why you'll care for the next few more minutes about news writing, is that 67% of Americans polled this year say they got news from online media every day, whether it was on a computer or mobile device or on a news website or links from a social media or other sources. The news isn't dead, even if we're putting our morning newspaper boys out of business. So here's a little personal example from my life. I am born, raised in Colorado. So we always had, growing up, we had the Denver Post and the Rocky Mountain News. It was always the main Tuesdays. So this story is really personal because my aunt wrote for the Rocky Mountain News for almost 20 years. So if she had been alive when the Rocky Mountain News went out of business in 2009, I think she would have been completely devastated. But the good news is in 2017, with all of her nieces and nephews, she definitely would still be getting her news from the Rocky Mountain News source banner through the websites and Facebook. I think we would have had to get her there, but we would have gotten her there, and that news and information that she trusted would still be there. Okay, so the news isn't dead. Hemingway gave us some big picture ideas of writing that we can use in all of our news writing, or all of our writing for the classroom. So I want to do a little experiment here. For about 10 seconds, just close your eyes and take a moment to picture what the inside of a newspaper or magazine looks like. You've seen it on the front of the presentation, but I am confident here that most of us can picture the general format of news, and that look does have specific roles in attracting readers' attention. Ooh, maybe I shouldn't have made you close your eyes at 8 a.m. Okay, open your eyes if they're not open yet. So let's walk through some of the elements that you probably pictured in your mind here. The first is the headline, that big, bold section at the top of every news article. Many of us do skim headlines to see what we're going to read. If you do this, you know the importance of this incomplete sentence on a news page. David Ogilvy, one of the founders of public relations, has said on average 5 times as many people read the headlines as read the body copy of a newspaper. For our exercise here, could we think of the headline in a newspaper as the subject line in our course announcements? When we log into Canvas, we see a list of 3 headlines, basically asking students, so which one's it going to be? I'd like to assume that students read every announcement I post, but we know that they simply don't. So we have to grab their attention. If you look at any news story, the big, bold headline is short. In print, it's a matter of how many columns wide the story is and the font size, as well as balancing with the importance of the other headlines on the page. Here's a couple of rules for the headline. It should be useful, going back to that question of why should I care? The headlines need to be unique. If all 3 of them are the same, or if they're the same from week to week, students are going to assume that they already know what's in it, so why should they read it? The subject line should convey a sense of urgency. Like we talked about in the beginning, there are lots of distractions when we're online, so putting a sense of urgency into the subject line has a better chance of keeping the reader focused right now versus something else drawing them away. So once you get their attention from that headline, the next paragraph is often called the lead or the net graph. This goes back to one of those rules from the beginning of being short, 25 to 30 words, which compared to that headline is pretty generous. And we have to really get to the point in that paragraph. So I don't want to say that the lead and the nut graph are like a thesis statement, but they do a similar thing, that they get to the main point. They tell our readers what the overall story is about. So remember, if students are reading just the first 20 to 28% of what you've written, will they get the big picture of your idea? Speaking of the details for the article, journalism uses the inverted pyramid style. I'm confident that most of us have heard of this topic, so I won't go into it into great detail. But I do want it to be a consideration in your online reading. If a student reads only the first 20% of your guidance or your announcement, shouldn't it be the must-know information that starts in the inverted pyramid? I'd like to think that everything I post for my students is must-know, but boiling it down to the key points helps everyone focus in more. So today, I hope I've opened your eyes to understand that the news is not dead and their writing style is unique and purposeful, especially in the ways that they have adapted to online writing. We even only covered the first 2 parts of a news article with the headline and the lead, and the rest of the article fills in with details and information that I know we're all excited and anxious to show our students. We have a lot of great writing teachers and methods, but Ernest Hemingway and the Associated Press are combining with the science behind online reading to most effectively reach our readers, who are our students in our online classrooms. So one more time, I ask myself the question, why should I care? In the textbook, Enhancing Adult Motivation to Learn, the author tells us that before adults can learn anything, someone or something has to gain their attention. I hope that you'll consider yourself and your writing style as the someone and the something that captures your students' attention. So here is, as we wrap it up, my contact information. Again, I kind of breezed through that at the beginning. Some of the sources, if you want to see a complete list of the sources, I'm happy to pull that for you. If you want to see this presentation before this recorded presentation goes live, you can see that on my personal portfolio there on that Blogspot page. And if you're interested in connecting with me, my email's there, or LinkedIn. I'm always happy to network and reach out to other faculty and colleagues at Ashford.